In order to deliver his speech, I would like to invite His Excellency Mehmet Şimşek, the Deputy Prime Minister, to the floor.
Günaydın.
Good morning,
Saygıdeğer katılımcılar.
distinguished attendants. After this session of advertisement of our sponsors, I would like to advertise about Turkey very little. Of course, it is indeed a great honor for me to be in this Uludağ Economy Summit. I would like to congratulate all the organizers, the Capital and Economist magazines and the Doğan Publishing, because I always feel like I am one part of this Uludağ Economy Summit, because for many years they are asking for my opinions, and I feel like I am at home.
Hoş geldiniz demek isterim, özellikle yabancı Bugün Türkçe konuşacağım. Bugün sunumum da yok.
This day I will speak in Turkish and I don't have a presentation because right now both Turkey and the world is indeed going through very chaotic times. Last year, everybody was questioning whether the Brexit would happen, but of course many of us had a different understanding whether the Brexit would really happen or not. If you ask people whether Trump will be elected as a president or not, of course, we would definitely see many challenging ideas. Most probably, many of you would have said Trump would not be elected. If you had said, if I have asked you whether there's going to be a coup attempt in Turkey or not, many of you would have laughed. But all of those events took place. And unfortunately, the world is going through harsh times. After the financial crisis, many shocks had taken place. But this year, the global economy is starting to recover itself. Last week, I was in Baden in Germany, and there was an optimist perspective for the global economy, and we can say that there is a certain level of recovery. But I can say that the 2016 was a tough time for many economies, and we would like to start 2017 with the optimist perspective. With regards to Turkey, in my 30 minutes of speech, I would like to convey my answers for some of the questions. Everybody is asking what will happen to Turkey, what will happen to the Turkish economy, and everybody is concerned. I can say that Turkish economy resisted many global shock and many global crises. And this is indeed implying that the foundation of the Turkish economy is quite sound and strong. Global crisis and the European debt crisis affected us a lot because the European Union is an important trade partner for Turkey. The Arab Spring started with great hopes, but I can say that right now we are facing the ice age in the Middle East and North Africa, and there are many geopolitical tensions and such geopolitical conflicts in the MENA region is affecting Turkey as well. Weak statehood in those areas indeed provided sufficient ground for the proliferation of terrorist attacks. We had our problems with Russia very recently, as you followed, but if you evaluate the last years in Turkey, although we had many negative events like the failed coup attempt, and we have gone through many elections, although we had such harsh times, Turkish economy, especially after the global financial crisis, found employment for 7 million people. This is a remarkable number, but this is not enough because our unemployment rate is over 10% right now. And starting from 2000, the Turkish economy grew on average by 6%. Because of the terrorism and the failed coup attempt last year, the growth rate was reduced a little bit last year. And although we had many ambiguities and uncertainties, in 2017 we are observing that the growth is going on. So there is such a huge resilience in the Turkish economy. This is quite important because this shows us that as the uncertainties are reduced, the Turkish economy will be on the track of high growth once again. There is no other reason for Turkish economy not to be on this track. And this is our scenario for the future of the Turkish economy. If you evaluate Turkey from outside of the Turkey, everybody has a negative understanding about the Turkish economy, but this is not the reality. We would like to indeed implement a reform for the Turkish economy because we don't find the economic growth of Turkey enough, but we want the Turkish economy to be as strong as possible in the short term and the long term possible. Turkish economy has the population of 80 million people, and with the purchasing power parity over 20,000 US dollars, how many countries can you count? Most probably it will not be over 6 or 7. So, I mean, the story of the Turkish economy indeed didn't end right now, and we have many reforms to make this story as beautiful as possible. And the biggest reform which would prevent the upcoming crisis will be the constitutional reform, and this is a structural reform. I am a member of the 65th government of the Republic of Turkey, and Turkey indeed didn't celebrate its 100th anniversary. The United States of America has been managed over 240 years with the presidential system. The 45th president of the United States of America just taken the office. And unfortunately, with the parliamentary system, we couldn't achieve the stability, the administrative stability in this country. And if we had 65 different governments starting from 1953, and if they had the average life of 16 months or 18 months, then it means that we have a problem. And the constitutional reform will definitely provide stability for the Turkish economy. The people will choose the president for 5 years of term, and the next day the president was elected. The president, together with the high bureaucracy, will have a chance to implement his own program.
So, what about the power balance in this system? What about the checks and balance? As a matter of fact, in most Western democracies, the present establishments and the infrastructure are already in compliance with what we are trying to introduce. People are frequently discussing and debating about the jurisdiction and its freedom. The Supreme Board of Judges and Lawyers is going to be a new system in itself after the constitutional change. There will be 13 members which are going to be assigned with the votes of the qualified majority. And this qualified majority system is actually a threshold in terms of establishing this balance and justice. Therefore, contrary to what is being alleged all the time, the separation of powers and the freedom of jurisdiction are not going to be jeopardized after the constitutional change, because independent members are going to be elected through the votes of the qualified majority. I mean, this system is not really different than France from the USA or from Korea or from Germany, because power will be rooted in the public, the people. The parliament and the president are going to be democratically elected, and they are going to elect the members of the Supreme Board of Judges and Lawyers. What matters most is the status of the parliament, the Grand National Assembly. It should be understood that the Grand National Assembly is going to function the way it is currently functioning. It is not going to be hindered. And everybody has the false understanding that execution, jurisdiction, and all three powers are separate from each other in this current parliamentary system. It is not actually reflecting the truth. Currently, the government that is elected has full control over jurisdiction, execution, and enforcement. Therefore, you cannot really say that current system is excellent and the new system is going to hamper the separation of powers. I have been a deputy of the parliament for over a decade, and I have seen personally that till now no proposal of draft laws has been adopted by now without the full support of the party that is in power. The cabinet, the government has to stand behind that proposal, or else it is not already going to be adopted. Here is what I am trying to say. This new system is going to bring in two advantages. First, we will have governmental stability. Hopefully, this system will allow us to conduct elections in every 5 years rather than having interim elections and such. Secondly, this current system has a big fault underlying it. The Constitution of '82, which was introduced after the coup of '82, dictates that the President of Republic has immense powers. If you try to assign a person to a rightful position, you cannot do it no matter what, as long as you cannot obtain the approval of the President of Republic. This means the current President of Republic has immense powers already, and he is not accountable by constitution. Can he be brought to court? No, as long as there is no treason. So think about this President of Republic. If this President was elected by the people, and if it is also consolidated with another party that is in power, there is going to be a friction, of course, due to the powers not agreeing with each other. But with this new system, representation will have a just facade to it. So what are we going to do after this constitutional change, amendment? We have a serious agenda of reforms. As you may remember, I delivered a speech last year, and I also talked about these reforms. It was a tough year for us. We had terror troubles, and later on we also had the attempted coup that we had to deal with, but these did not stop us. Last year, we launched a few reforms which would improve our environment of research and development. We offer not only new incentives, but also we've established some funds to support research and development. Last year, also, the labor reform was realized. We had been talking about it since 2007. It introduced a few changes, for example, about the restrictions on part-time work and part-time labor being removed. Last year, we also had some reforms about about jurisdiction too. Last year, we established ancillary courts, and right now, thanks to our local courts of appeal, we will not have files piling up over there in our capital courts in Ankara. They will be resolving a lot of cases locally. Also, again, last year, we conducted a taxation reform for SMEs. Think about it, it was a really tough year, it was a challenging year, but despite that, we still achieved this. Other than that, we also had the mediation system installed. In addition to that, we had the specialized courts which were established. Additionally, some labor issues like severance pay and seniority indemnity, they were also tackled. However, we need to complete our process of innovation in research and development arena. As a matter of fact, one thinks about options like venture capital and private equity. And the idea at the moment is to gather together all of these concepts together in order to support high-tech startups in a long-term period. This is a system we are working at the moment. Currently, we have a lot of incentives for angel investors. We have incentives for venture capitals. We have the fund of funds. And there are a wide range of options when it comes to financial support. TÜBİTAK in Turkey is quite like the NSF of USA, but it needs to be restructured too in order for it to function better in science and scientific research. It is going to be supported too. In public accounting and public finance, we are also working on the tax procedural law. We will simplify the legislation, and the drafts are already waiting on the table. We will adopt them as soon as possible, but these are not going to be sufficient because we require some administrative reforms in public management too. Currently, in coordination with me and our ministerial undersecretary, we are working on drafting a list of public costs that we have to deal with and reduce. And also there is something really bothering about the way bureaucracy works at the moment. People, the citizens, have to come up with paper documents when they have to apply to something. We need to eliminate this need due to the fact that we can actually benefit from the electronic environment. As you know, the World Bank publishes this report called Doing Business. We worked on the latest report, and it tells us that in New Zealand, in only half a day, it is possible to establish a company with a really low cost. And they can liquidify a company in really a short period of time, while in Turkey it takes months. We will have to discuss and tackle these two. Currently, there is a perception about Turkey. It seems like there is a recession of democracy, or we are straying away from the rule of law. But these are wrong, because Turkey had to deal with a lot of catastrophes. Turkey was traumatized beyond reason, and they were complicated traumas. Our response to those traumas were perplexed. The perception in the end was misunderstood. But the reality is that we did not announce state of emergency just because we wanted to do it. just because we want to do it arbitrarily. We did so because we are in the target zone of a lot of different terrorist organizations based in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Iraq, and in our own soil. There were a lot of acts of terrorism which were followed by an attempted coup, so we had to announce a state of emergency, and it is not a permanent solution. Also, think about yourself. If there was an attempted coup, what would you do about it? You would bring those in charge to trial. You would conduct reforms in order to exert civil control on your armed forces. But if this attempted coup had been the result of a religious community that had been trying to seep into power through different instruments of the state for a period of 40 years, and if that community has its governor, its head, its ruler based in the USA, you wouldn't even believe it, because even in movie scenarios, it is kind of absurd. Even if Dan Brown came up with such a scenario, you would see to it that it was disregarded as an absurdity. But this happened in Turkey, and it is not something that broke out recently. It had been a process of infiltration going on for 40 years. When you are fighting it, you have to take drastic measures. And people are criticizing that we are straying away from democracy. However, ponder this. If this coup was successful, the democracy and the very existence of Turkey was going to be exterminated. And probably if it succeeded, we would have some spiritual leader leading Turkey, which is nightmarish. It should be understood that thanks to the solid stance of our President of the Republic, and thanks to your stance, thanks to the approach of the media and all the political parties, Turkey successfully evaded one of the biggest terrorist attacks targeting the Turkish government, the Turkish state in its entirety. It's not a simple act of terrorism. It was complicated. We had to deal with it. And due to the steps we have taken so far, people are perceiving Turkey to be growing in terms of authoritarianism, which is wrong. Currently, all the steps we are taking are aimed at empowering the rule of law. It has been our biggest focus so far throughout our years of power. And we will prove it to those external parties who are frowning upon us. Turkey is not going to enter a period of democratic recession. This is not going to happen. In recent months, we conducted a lot of important steps too. For example, the European Union wanted to expand and improve the customs union arrangement to include some other options and items in it after a revision, for example, agriculture, and we did it. Also, by the end of last year, we were visiting Saudi Arabia, and we undersigned a free trade agreement with them. And the current agreement gives Arabian citizens the right to get double citizenship in Turkey if they can invest a certain amount or if they can purchase a household in Turkey. According to different programs like the Britain's highly skilled immigrant program, we drafted our own schedule in order to utilize the manpower, the labor power of our Syrian guests. They are already a power present, and we need to utilize and benefit from them. This is something we did too, amidst all that chaos. Turkey is not, in that regard, moving away from Western values. What we call West is a set of values, that is true. And Turkey is doing its best to keep up. For example, we are soon going to have a summit in Antalya where we are going to have visitors from Britain from highest levels of government. Well, actually, Britain had Brexit, but it is currently still an integral part of Britain. Then there is France, which is an integral part of Europe. Some countries, however, did not really understand the fact that we were actually maintaining the same values as them during this last period of time. They did impose some sanctions on us, Austria and Germany and Netherlands. They did impose some sanctions on us in a falsified manner. Additionally, I need to talk about education. About 1/4 of our taxation revenue is currently being invested in education. Although we cannot still reap the rewards of this entire investment, we will continue to do it. Up until now, we did achieve a lot of good things like employing 600,000 teachers and doubling university capacities, etc. But right now, we believe we have to focus on qualifications. And we made some decisions like making preschool education obligatory. And we also have full-day education regulations that entered into force as of 2009. Some reforms are still waiting. For example, we want to make sure that the 5th grade becomes a preparatory class. We are negotiating with Malta too for language teaching capabilities. In the meantime, the private sector's share is going to increase in the field of education. If a private sector company is going to invest in education, we are going to allocate space for them, we will offer tax exemptions, and we will offer other incentives. Additionally, we will also fill the idle capacity of private schools. We will do our best as the state. As long as the private sector shoulders the burden, build school, we will offer all kinds of incentives. So we realize that the world is changing really rapidly. Industry 4.0 is highly critical. We missed the first one. The Ottoman state perished because of that. The second industrial revolution was not caught up with for about 50 to 60 years. But we will have to catch up with Industry 4.0 without it is too late. But education is going to be our biggest weapon in this process, and lifelong learning will be one of the items in our arsenal. Again, let me remind you that Turkey has been undergoing a really tough time, but the economy has been resilient. Problems were abound, and they are already apparent. We have the current deficit, we have a growing unemployment rate. These are all facts. But it should be said that if you have to be pessimistic about Turkey, you need to be able to list 3 problems. First, you would have to say Turkey is unable to conduct reforms. There is no will to do so. But it is wrong. You can't say that. We have strong willpower to conduct reforms to carry Turkey over to the group of high-income countries. Thanks to the reforms we have conducted during the early 2000s, Turkey's income per capita increased from about $8,000 to $20,000. The currency exchange rate also was kept at a steady level despite all the currency exchange gaps growing in the recent years. This geographical region is like a cauldron of problems at the moment. At least this is what other people see from other parts of the world. But we beg to differ. This is ethnically, religiously, and historically a wealthy place. I am talking in a general sense, though. This geographical region, when enriched with democratic values and a sense of being brothers and sisters, once it is restructured, it is going to become one of the most outstanding places of the world. But if we do that, the superpowers of the world should stop backing up some religious sects and ethnicities as if they were supporting football clubs. The current Middle Eastern policies they are conducting, they are maintaining, are only generating strife and chaos. But in Turkey, we believe that the differences are our wealth. I have always told about this story, about my childhood. Since until I was 6 years old, I did not speak a single word of Turkish. I was speaking Kurdish. And my wife was born in Çubuklu, Ankara. We have 3 kids. These kids, when they wake up in the morning, don't give a single damn about whether we are Turkish or Kurdish, although one of the parents is Kurdish and one is a Turk. We are proud to be 2 different sides of the scale. I have always said this. Istanbul, in terms of the absolute population, is one of the biggest Kurdish cities of the world. You cannot even talk about a distinguishing factor between Turks and Kurds in that city. So we have to be siblings. But the terrorist organizations are not really concerned about these siblinghood values. If they did care about being brothers and sisters, they wouldn't engage in terrorist acts. With correct strategies, we can cleanse the Middle East, and hopefully in about 3 years we will be talking about absolute peace in the Middle East. Also, let's talk about liberal democracy. It's being suppressed in the entire world, in the USA even. Liberal democracy is in danger, in jeopardy, because there is fear, there is terror, there is immigration, and there is this protectionism wave going on. These cannot be ignored. They are different items of threat. As somebody who has lived in Europe for a long while, and as somebody who has always promoted relations between Turkey and Europe, I can comfortably say that a lot of different fields in Europe, due to their applications, are back to the medieval ages. For example, when it comes to Islamophobia, there is an environment of medieval ages. People are not respecting the differences of others. We have to do this because tolerance is the only way to go. This can only be achieved through liberal democracy. In Turkey, liberal democracy is being threatened by terror and terrorist acts. In this environment, suicidal bombs and suicide attackers are supported by municipalities even. I am talking about Turkish examples. In such a chaotic environment, you cannot really establish a sound democracy. I would like to highlight the fact that, once again, Turkish economy is still resilient despite all of this. But Turkey's willpower to become and remain a democratic state is going to continue as strong as ever, because we are working tirelessly to normalize this situation that we are in at the moment. Third, we are not going to be an enclosed state. We are going to be open to all different countries. We want to integrate to the world. And there is this misconception about technology and commerce eradicating the opportunities of employment. We don't believe in that idea. We can still generate employment opportunities through education. Well, in summary, we are optimistic and we should be optimistic. There are, of course, problems, but we are going to overcome them. On the 16th of April, a powerful yes vote is going to close down a whole chapter, a chapter of chaos, and then we will normalize as rapidly as possible after reforms are ignited. I know I am already beyond the time allocated to me, but our sponsors also did the same. So you will have to let me, because I have to advertise Turkey just like they advertise their brands. Thank you for listening.
Sayın Başbakan Yardımcımız Mehmet Şimşek'e
Distinguished Deputy Prime Minister, thank you very much for your speech.